Question number 1, we're looking at what type of sequence is given in these first 3 problems. So if you'll remember, arithmetic, this is like a linear function. So if we're looking for looking at a sequence, we're looking to see if it has a common difference, which is really a slope. And then if it is geometric, that's really when we have an exponential function and we're looking for a common ratio. So to find a common difference, we take our second term and we subtract it from our first term, and then for a common ratio, I shouldn't have put a ration, this should be a ratio, we would have A2 divided by A1. So looking at this first term, if I take, or this first sequence here, if I take the second term, this is A2 because it's the second one in the list, and I divide it by the first one, if I'm checking for a geometric sequence. I don't know why I picked geometric instead of linear first, but I did. So if we did 17 over 19, and I look to see what that equals, let me pull up my calculator here as a decimal. So 17 over 19, and that gives me 0.89 for. So if I look at the next two in the sequence, like if I did 14 and 17, 14 divided by 17, the third term divided by the next term, I get 0.82. So we see that those are not the same ratio when we divide. When I subtract, if I'm checking for my common difference, if I did 17 minus 19, I would get -2, but if I did 14 minus 17, I'd get -3. So since I don't have the same difference between each term, and I don't have the same ratio between each term, it is neither geometric or arithmetic. So if I look at choice 2, if I were to test, I'll do arithmetic first this time since it's listed first. If I were to check by subtraction first, if I do -20 minus -10, that's going to turn that into a plus, and I'm going to end up with -10. If I do the same thing again, -30 minus -20, that's going to turn into a positive. Two negatives make a positive. -20 or -30 plus 20 also gives me -10. Since I got the same common difference, the answer to number 2 would be arithmetic. It's a linear sequence. That would be my slope. -10 would be my slope. And then lastly, looking at number 3, if I test again to see if it's arithmetic, if I subtract, I start out by subtracting, 1/2 minus 1 would give me -1/2. But then 1/4 minus 1/2, if I subtract those two, I'm just going to get -1/4. I'm not going to get the same answer, so it's not arithmetic. But if I go ahead and I divide, so if I did 1/2 divided by 1, anything divided by 1 is just itself, so that would be 1/2. If you do 1/4 divided by 1/2, okay, if we do that in the calculator, you can simply do like this, division. Remember, fractions are just division. 1/4 in parentheses divided by 1/2, and I get 0.5, which is the same as 1/2. And if you want to test that, I have that fraction to decimal button here, and I get 1/2. And if we did it for the next set here, if I go back and I test the 1/8 to the 1/4, if we were to divide again, 1/8 divided by 1/4, we still get 1/2. And then you could test that last one, 1/16 divided by 1/8, and we get 1/2. So my common ratio was 1/2, which makes this a geometric function.